president of the Vermont State AFL-CIO, and this federation has been taking the lead really in trying to call for the labor movement to begin to challenge the danger of the fascists and the threat of another coup and insurrection, and also the fight in the AFL-CIO for democracy. So welcome to our show, David.
As always, Steve, it's a pleasure to be here.
So David, your local or your state council decided that you wanted to make a fight at the convention on critical issues. Why don't you say what those are and why the convention, in your view, should have taken them up?
Well, as I'm talking to you from the convention, I got a little break right now before I got to get back in there. I'm in Philadelphia right now representing Vermont workers, along with our executive director, Liz Medina. Our executive board forwarded for consideration of this convention 2 resolutions. One that would put us down the road to taking steps to organize a general strike should there be another coup attempt in this country in the wake of the 2024 presidential election. That is something that should be of grave concern to everybody, especially folks are paying attention, I hope, in watching the nightly news and watching the hearings that are going on in Washington and realizing how precarious our democracy is. The other resolution we brought forward would provide for a democratization of our own organization, whereby we would move to a 1-member, 1-vote system for election of national officers and provide for solidarity, but autonomy for state labor councils and central labor councils in staking out their own political, social, and economic positions. Both of those resolutions were not brought to the floor, were not allowed to be brought to the floor. They went to the resolutions committee. The resolutions committee referred them to the executive council for further discussion. The executive council met several days ago. They went through their agenda, and when they got to the various resolutions were referred to them for further discussion, they willfully, I'm told, I was not there, did not have a discussion on them. If it wasn't, there was one of our progressive allies did raise the issue and requested that there be a full discussion on such matters. I'm told that did not happen. And they are not going to be debated. Union democracy will not be debated democratically on the floor of the convention. We're very disappointed in this. The irony is not lost upon us that through an undemocratic process, that the very notion of internal union democracy won't have its day. It's been defeated without a single vote being casted. That said, myself and Director Liz Medina, who is also a member of the UAW, we have raised our concerns on the floor. We have talked about the need for establishing real democracy within the AFL-CIO, within the labor movement. We've talked about how crucial it is that members come to feel ownership over the organization. If we're gonna be fighting in the workplaces, if we're gonna be fighting in the political arena, if we're gonna be fighting in the streets, if we're gonna be demonstrating, if we're gonna ask our members to go to bat to build the kind of labor movement we need to get things like the PRO Act passed, and not just introduced, then they need to feel a sense of ownership of the organization. And one way that we achieve that is by allowing our 12 million plus members to actually have a say and actually have a vote on who leads this organization.
And the convention is taking place in the midst, as you mentioned earlier, of these national hearings in Congress about the attempted coup, unsuccessful coup, and insurrection that took place. How is it that this national issue on the future of the United States, really, with the present structure, is not a debate and issue at the AFL-CIO convention? You would think that even the Democrats are taking it seriously. They're worried that this will happen again, and especially it looks like the Republicans are going to take Congress and maybe take the presidency. That seems to be like a life and death question for the working class in this country.
It absolutely is. But our resolutions are not the only ones that don't make it to the floor. APWU brought forward a resolution that would commit us to a program of anti-fascism, and one which recognizes the rise of fascism across the United States. In my mind, that was an important resolution to be debated and discussed on the floor, to get to issues like this, to get to the fact that our democracy is precarious, to get to the fact that a militant and armed right wing is growing in this country. And now they've already done the dry run of how to pull off a coup. But that resolution, like ours, was not allowed to be debated or voted on. And we're very disappointed in that, right? But the thing is,
were those resolutions provided to the members, the delegates of the convention, so they knew even that they were submitted?
we were provided an app that you click on to download onto your phone, which if you went through the various functions of the app, you could find all the resolutions that were submitted word for word. So they did exist there, but there's no paper handouts, so to speak. There's no, you have to willfully know what you're looking for to go and look at them. But we were able to raise a number of these issues from the floor to get the conversation going. We see this as a start. We need to talk about union democracy now if we're going to build a movement strong enough to win it internally within the AFL-CIO. We need to start talking about the threat of a coup and the rise of fascism now if we're going to be able to push back on that and defeat it. So while we're disappointed that our members our delegates were not allowed to participate in that an organized conversation about this, we were pleased to be able to raise these issues from the floor. And we know this is going to be a long fight, and we're in for the long haul, and we're going to change the AFL-CIO from within.
And there were other labor councils around the country that supported your resolution or joined together with you with resolutions for a general strike against an attempted coup. Was there any support by them or discussion by them on what they're going to do as well?
We've been having robust conversations with various central labor councils and state federations since we've been here, as well as some international leaders that have been very positive. The Rochester CLC, of course, adopted a general strike resolution in 2020 when there was a threat of a coup. They have delegates here. We've met with them. We've had a great conversation. We've met with leaders from other state labor councils. And we know that the conversation is going to continue outside the convention. And it's those individual relationships, those organization relationships, through those discussions, we see a path forward in the long run to make the kind of change we need to build a fighting labor movement and to change politics as usual in this country.
And also there has been the issue of the Solidarity Center, which is funded by $75 million from the National Endowment for Democracy. They were involved in Ukraine, privatizing the wealth of Ukraine and supporting the coup in 2014. They really, their budget now is $13 million for the staff in 2019. The AFL-CIO staff budget is $16 million. So how is it that the International Solidarity Center, the AFL-CIO, has a budget almost comparable to the AFL-CIO's?
Well, that seems something that really needs to be looked at. Unfortunately, that's not being debated or discussed at the convention. Now, listen, we've done a lot of good things at this convention, Steve. We've adopted strong positions on universal healthcare. We've adopted strong positions on a shorter work week. But we've done good things. But what I see as lacking from this convention are several things. And I mean this is a friendly critique from within the AFL-CIO. Number one, we're not talking about the things that aren't working. We're not talking about the problems that we may have. Resolutions are passing unanimously, those that people have been allowed to see. That's not what democracy is about. We need to be able to debate things like the role of the Solidarity Center in the world and its relation to American foreign policy. Those are the type of things we need robust debates on. We need to see us talking about fundamentally changing the way we do business within the AFL and our relationship with the Democratic Party, which has failed us time and time again. Now, those are the things that are not being debated today. I mean, what I got to say that I'd like to spend a little less time celebrating our victories and a little more time talking about our defeats and talking about the things we need to do better. Because if we keep doing things the same way we have been doing them for decades, we're going to continue to see shrinking union membership. In Vermont, we have a growing union membership, and we need to see that happen all across this country. But we're not going to do it if we keep doing the same old things over and over and refuse to have those critical debates and critical discussions, which some folks would rather us not have.
And one of the issues are that workers are joining unions around the country, Starbucks, Amazon workers. It seems like there's a rising up of workers who want unions around the country. And is that reflected at this convention, these young workers and maybe new union organizations?
There has been some talk regarding the role of younger workers in the new massive drives to unionize across this country. I found it a little bit frustrating that there was nobody here to speak about directly to the Starbucks, so far at least the Starbucks organizing. Of course, that's largely taking place right now with SEIU, and they're not part of the AFL-CIO. But one of the things we need to also do is break down silos. You know, I think we have enough of this provincialism, enough of this territorialism, where we argue about jurisdiction more so about how we're going to effectively organize. We have to get beyond that. We have to recognize that, like it or not, we are one labor movement, and we have to learn to work together, coordinate our efforts if we're going to have a shot at changing the world.
And in regard to the fight against fascism, how do you see that happening? I mean, a united front of workers, unions, or community organizations, because it seems that these massacres, racist massacres that have been taking place with these Nazis, young youth that have been, you know, brainwashed. If the Republicans take power, you could have 5 or 6 massacres a day with these people out and about with these machine guns.
Well, I don't pretend to have all the answers to this. I know that we have to actively combat fascism, and we can't be afraid to physically confront fascists when they are in public. That's something we should be doing. Now, one of the things in our general strike resolution that did not go to a vote in the final part of it was to also create a national AFL-CIO commission on fascism, which would take between now and May 1st of next year to explore the problem of fascism and what we could actively do as a labor movement, as the AFL-CIO, to combat it directly. That was not, obviously that was not debated by the convention. However, later today, in a couple hours, in fact, there is going to be a resolution introduced in opposition to racism, and we're going to seek to insert that aspect of the resolution into, by amendment, into the anti-racist resolution. I do not know if it will be allowed to introduce amendments from the floor. I question whether or not that will be recognized or ruled out of order by the convention, but that's something that we're absolutely going to try to do, and it's an issue we need to flag. So we need to take fascism seriously. We need to take coup threats seriously. We need to take the threat of the far right seriously. And we can't just put our head in the sand and pretend that if we hitch our wagons to the Democratic Party, everything's going to be okay.
You think that that's the reason they were afraid of having a discussion on these issues at the convention? I mean, the rise of fascism is a real issue in this country, yet there doesn't seem to be a discussion, any resolution to even address that threat.
I'm not going to try to speculate and pretend why I know the thinking, right, of the national leadership and why they chose, willfully chose, not to allow our members to debate these issues. But I can speak to the issues themselves. Now, when it comes to democracy, us up here in Vermont, I'm president of Vermont AFL-CIO, and we know a thing or two about democracy. For something over 200 years, we've been practicing town meeting democracy, whereby all the citizens in a community get to come together and vote and debate things from the floor and make amendments and change their ordinances, their rules, their towns, their budgets as they see fit. If any Vermonter was to come to this convention and experience what we just went through, they would say, okay, when does the democracy part start? Now, I recognize that this is a culture that is 50 plus years in the making in the AFL-CIO, and we don't turn it around overnight. But we need workers to not just come to conventions to take part in a pep rally or cheerleading. We need workers to come to really dive into the hard issues, the difficult issues, the ones we don't have consensus on, and trust that through a democratic process, trust through the collective insight of hundreds, thousands, and millions of members, that we could come to a better understanding of the challenges we face and how to overcome them, as opposed to putting that responsibility in the hands of just a few. I mean, we just had an election for AFL-CIO president and all national offices. And congratulations to Liz Schuler for becoming the first woman president elected in the history of our organization. But here's the thing, 500 delegates, roughly, elected a president for over 12 million workers. There are countries in this world with far fewer than 12 million citizens. If we said if we saw that one of those countries elected their president by 500 people, 500 officials, essentially, we would not call that a democracy, right? And why should we call it a democracy here? We inherit what we get. I get that. I don't begrudge that. We have a history. but we also have a responsibility to try to change things, make them better, more democratic, and we need to live by the ideals we aspire towards.
And this issue of direct vote of either rank and file for the president, that exists in some unions, the Teamsters, but in your union, for example, AFSCME, do they have a direct rank and file election of the president of AFSCME? I mean, in my union, the CWA, I'm in the journalist union, there's not a direct election of the president. I think it'd be a healthy thing to have a debate and rank and file, but in most national unions, they don't have direct election of the national president.
So I believe, in my opinion, the internationals need to decide how best to run their internationals. I do support one member, one vote as a general notion. I was happy to see the UAW, which is a very large union, recently went to that as well. So those are fights that need to happen and discussions that need to happen within the internationals themselves. As the AFL-CIO and as State Labor Council president for the Green Mountain State, I know that we could have say and influence over the AFL-CIO as such. And that's the fight we choose to have now. That's where the discussion we choose to have now. And that's where we believe the reform has to happen.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us. We've been talking with David Van Deusen, president of the Vermont AFL-CIO at the AFL-CIO convention in Philadelphia, where he sought to raise 2 resolutions from his council on the issue of democracy and the threat of fascism and the need for a general strike if there's another insurrection or attempted coup. So thanks for joining us, David.
Solidarity.